Welcome back to another video. I'm 7stop, and today I'm going to be talking about the JLPT, particularly the JLPT N1, and how difficult is it to pass the N1 as an immersion learner. When are you ready and how should you study? That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So I think this is a question that a lot of immersion learners have actually, because the N1 is kind of a blue-pilled goal, but a lot of immersion learners still want to achieve that, and they want to know when they're ready to achieve it. A lot of people I see taking it too early and failing and stuff like that. They think they're better than they are, and obviously immersion learning is powerful, but it's going to take time to be good enough to pass the N1. And just for those who aren't familiar with it, I have passed the N1. I got a 170 out of 180, so it's a high score but not perfect. And I've been immersing for around 3 years now. So I'm nearing the 3-year mark. I need to make a 3-year update video soon. I took the N1 in December last year. So at that point I was like 2.5 years of immersion pretty much. And before immersion I did do a little bit of traditional study, like maybe 6 months of Duolingo and books and stuff like that. And for my immersion journey, for most of it, I've been immersing at least 3 to 4 hours actively every day. And then lots of passive immersion, basically passive immersing all the time. Anytime I have free time, I've been passive immersing. So right off the bat, I'll say I don't think that N1 is super easy, but if you've been immersing for a couple years, you'll definitely pass, and probably with a high score. And so if you've been immersing for more than 3 years, I think obviously like at a hardcore pace, like not like immersing 1 hour a day, like you've been doing a lot of immersion, a lot of listening, passive listening. If you're a pretty serious immersion learner, you've been doing it for more than 3 years, I think you can definitely pass. And if you're a serious learner and you've been doing it for more than 2 years, you could probably pass. But this depends on what you're immersing in, obviously. The content you're immersing in is going to have a huge effect on how prepared you are for the N1. And also how much detail and how much attention you pay to like the nuance of words and when words are used in, like when they sound natural in sentences and stuff like that. That's going to be important. But the most important part is just the fundamental like intuitive acquisition of the Japanese language. So that comes through immersion. That's going to be the most important part, most useful thing that will help you on the N1. If you have a strong foundation, you understand Japanese words and the word usages intuitively and what sounds natural, then you shouldn't have much of an issue with the N1.
問題を受け、議会が意外な居眠り防止対策を打ち出しました。
And just a side note, I'm assuming you know what the N1 entails, like what's actually on the test. But basically there's like 2 writing sections. Well, one is like a grammatical kind of thing, I think, and then the other is like read text and then answer questions about the text. And then there's a listening section. Listening is usually the hardest. I got a perfect score on the first 2, but I lost points on listening, even though I'm a largely listening focused person. Like I've done mostly listening. So if you ask what kind of content you should be immersing in to get better at the N1, I think the most important thing is that you diversify into lots of different kinds of content. However, the N1 does have a lot of words based around daily or professional usage. So things like the news relating to real life, like the kind of words that you would see in maybe Japanese dramas or like maybe medical shows or something, like covering a person in a career. More of that stuff than the fantasy element, like, you know, like fantasy anime or light novels and those kind of things. The vocabulary and Japanese ability you gain from like stuff on YouTube and like daily life or especially career or news related content will be most useful on the N1. And another thing is that I think you should definitely read before you take the N1. So if you're not doing a lot of reading already, I would recommend getting into reading more before you take the N1 and basically learning how to read all of these words that you're going to need to know. If you don't already know that, if you're not already reading dominant. I know a lot of immersion learners these days are reading dominant, but having a fast reading speed will help you because there is a time limit and you're going to have to read long and relatively complex texts for the second part where you read those texts and answer questions about them. So you're going to want to have a fast reading speed, or at least not super slow. I actually have a pretty slow reading speed, but I still finished that, like the reading section, way before everybody else in my testing section. But fundamentally, whether you listen or read, what really matters is your grasp of the language, your intuitive understanding of the language, and how well you have, how deep that understanding is, and that kind of thing is really what's most important. And for studying, I do recommend studying. Some people go in, they don't study at all, and I think they will still pass the test. But by studying, I don't mean like cramming N1 words, blah, 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 blah. I actually did a N1 Anki deck, like of Anki words that appear on the N1, and I didn't really feel like a lot of those words came up on the N1 when I actually took the test. So most of the words that came up on the N1 that I had to know when I was taking the test were just words that appeared in my immersion anyway. So if you're immersing a lot and in a diverse selection of content, not just anime or light novels, then you should pick up the words that you need to know for the most part. It's important to always be challenging yourself with content. So if you can understand like a lot of slice of life anime and you just keep watching slice of life anime, you're not going to grow your vocabulary and your understanding anymore. So if you're already at a good point, like where your fundamental understanding ability, you should keep ramping up the difficulty of the content you watch and read, so that you can continue to increase your vocabulary in a diverse set of domains. The N1 study I think you should do is you should just look at practice tests and take them to get an idea of what the test feels like, what kind of questions you're going to encounter on the test, because that's going to help you a lot more than some of this other stuff. So just do some practice questions, get a hang for what kind of questions appear so that you're prepared. So like when you see it on the test, you don't have to waste time trying to figure out like how the question is structured and like structure-based things. You want to already know how the test is structured and what kind of questions are going to come up. So I would do, there's lots of practice tests online for listening, reading, grammar, all that stuff. So I would just do some of those so you get an idea of what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you need to focus on, and how prepared you are for the test. But I will say that if you take one of these online tests and you're like, holy crap, this is really hard, I don't know this, it's harder than I thought it would be, I actually think the real test is much easier. It was far easier than the practice. That's what I found. So don't be too discouraged. You can probably still pass the test even if you are struggling a bit on the practice. For those who are wondering, like, what's the earliest I can take the test? Because I know there's a lot of interesting like stories about, N1 in 6 months, N1 in 8 months, 9 months, N1 in a year, perfect score in 6 months. There's a lot of, pretty impressive scores out there. People who put in a ton of work, dedicated a ton of time to Japanese, and they usually studied very hard for the JLPT to achieve those scores. But if you're just a standard guy who does immerse quite a bit, but it's not like you have your entire day to dedicate to active immersion or for studying for the N1, then I wouldn't really recommend taking the N1 in your first year. Maybe a year and a half, if your immersion is going well and you have good comprehension and you feel good about it, you could maybe attempt it like a year and a half in. But it costs money, and it's only held at a few locations if you don't live in Japan. So I would really recommend going when you're confident that you will pass, which I think should be after 2 years probably. So what I want to say though is if you're an immersion learner, you will mog the competition at the N1. Seriously. You will, if you obviously if you're immersing a lot, if you're immersing seriously, then you will finish faster, score better, and just be way more confident than 90% of people who are taking this test. The test is somewhat challenging, but if you've been immersing for a couple years, you will be able to destroy this test. There's a lot of people who are serious immersion learners who were able to get a perfect score on the test. Okay, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and look forward to my next video. I'll definitely be making more soon. Thank you. Bye.